How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we have a very hot button issue that has been all over the internets, all over the media, but the media is not really reporting it in the way that it should be. They're leaving out key details and not telling you the full story, and we're going to get into that full story in this particular article. Now, this is on Politico, so it's going to be kind of left-leaning, so I'll fill in the gaps when need be. But you see the headline right over my left-hand shoulder. It says, Manafort trial day 14, jury scared as it heads home without a verdict. Now, they're scared for a variety of reasons, which we'll get into. But before we get into the article, I need to explain to you why this is important. Now, Paul Manafort was in the Trump campaign for a brief period of time, and he was the campaign chair from June to August of 2016. Okay, this is before the election, obviously. As part of the whole Trump, Russia, Putin collusion kerfuffle, I'm talking about Bob Mueller and the goons, they were trying to get dirt on anybody that they could in the Trump campaign in order to pressure them into so-called rolling on Trump. All right. So they got Paul Manafort and his associate Rick Gates on some money laundering thing that allegedly happened before they came in contact with the Trump campaign. Right, on their own personal business aside from the campaign. So they have charged him with the money laundering, and at least Paul Manafort was sentenced to house arrest before the trial. So that was his condition of bail. Rather than just being out all willy-nilly, you may be a flight risk, so we're going to just confine you to your house. Now, it was alleged that Paul Manafort and or Rick Gates engaged in witness tampering while he was under house arrest. So at least Paul Manafort has been sent to jail because the bail has been revoked, if that makes any sense. So this whole time, from the point where they said that witness tampering or whatever, he has been in jail. He's been in kind of a Club Med type situation, but I digress. Now we're in the trial phase and it's getting really hairy. Now let's get into the article to see what it says. Paul Manafort's trial will stretch into a fourth week as jurors headed home Friday without reaching a verdict for the second straight day, and the judge overseeing the case alluded to threats the jury may be receiving. And we're going to get into the threats after this paragraph here. Quote, I had no idea this case would incite this emotion, U.S. District Court Judge T.S. Ellis III said in an open court hearing, responding to a motion from 7 news organizations, including Politico, seeking access to sealed materials related to the trial that would have publicly identified the jurors. Now, this is on Politico. You see right over here and right there, we are on Politico. So at least they're admitting what they do. CNN also asked for information to reveal the jurors. And here's my thing. If I'm a juror on this case, I would not want my identity to be revealed to anybody, especially not CNN. We know how they are in favor of doxing. I just saw them give an interview with some Antifa people talking about doxing is not really a bad thing. And we've seen what CNN does. So I would not want my information to be out there for any of these news organizations, especially not CNN, but I digress. Ellis denied the motion, telling the courtroom that jurors were, quote, scared and afraid. As a result, Ellis said he didn't feel right releasing the names of the 12-person jury. And shout out to Judge Ellis for doing that, because obviously this is a really serious case. You're dealing with some deep state swamp type stuff. People come up missing. You never see him again. So I'm glad he was able to protect his jurors that way. And the article continues, but Manafort's team left court on Friday pleased that deliberations would spill into a third day, with Manafort lawyer Kevin Downing telling reporters it favored his client. Manafort is facing 18 counts of bank and tax fraud. In the first case, special counsel Bob Mueller has brought to trial as part of his wide-ranging probe of 2016 Russian election interference. Now, that sentence, if you didn't hear what I said earlier, you would think that the bank and tax fraud was related to the 2016 election Russia kerfuffle, but it wasn't. It was some previous stuff that allegedly happened with Paul Manafort's personal business that was brought up in order to try to get him to roll on Trump, to put pressure on his back, but he has not relented. Probably because there's nothing to talk about. You can't dig water out of a well that's dry, but let's continue. Here comes Trump. Shortly after the jurors resumed reviewing the evidence Friday morning, Trump weighed in on his former campaign chairman's case from the White House. Quote, I think the whole Manafort trial is very sad, Trump said in response to reporters' questions as he departed for fundraising events on Long Island. The most reliable politics newsletter. That's interesting. I'm just reading this little advertisement here from Politico. Is it reliable because it always comes to your inbox, or is it reliable because it's real news? I don't really know, but I digress. As he has before, the president downplayed the veteran GOP lobbyist consultant's role in his campaign from late March 2016 to mid-August of that same year. So you're talking about just a few months, a handful of months, and he was only the campaign chair for 3 months of that very short period of time. So, I mean, it's not necessarily downplaying, it's just calling the facts. Quote, he worked for me for a very short period of time, Trump said, adding he happens to be a very good person. Asked whether he might pardon the 69-year-old Manfort, who is facing the prospect of decades in prison on bank and tax fraud charges, the president did not respond directly. I don't talk about that. I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort. Of course, Downey, Manafort's attorney, welcomed Trump's comments. Quote, Mr. Manafort appreciates the support of President Trump, the defense attorney told reporters outside the courthouse Friday afternoon. Ellis has repeatedly instructed the jurors to avoid reading, seeing, or hearing media coverage of the trial. Now, how is that possible? This is all over the place. How are you just going to actually ignore all the coverage of it? It's really like, unless you just keep them in a padded room with no cell phone service, no nothing, they're going to have to hear it at a certain point. And if you were to out them, oh my goodness, that'd be even worse because you have reporters at their house. Like, here's my thing. Why would CNN want the names of these jurors for what? You gonna come outside their house and try to get an interview with them? Aren't you interfering with the whole process of defining? Aren't you interfering with the whole process of seeing whether Paul Manafort is innocent or guilty? He again asked Friday morning for them to confirm that they followed his direction and sent them home for the weekend with the same advice, including to avoid discussing the matter with anyone. Quote, there will be the usual temptations. Stop them, the judge said. It's unclear whether Trump's comments will pierce that veil. The jury appeared to break. Hold on, before I even get to this one. I mean, Trump's comments, is that what you worried about? Piercing the veil? Like, here's my thing. This has been in the news for a minute. You got these major news organizations trying to get the names and addresses of these jurors. Wouldn't that pierce the veil more than anything else? But I'll move on. The jury appeared to break for lunch around 12:30 p.m. Friday after about 3 hours of deliberations. A couple of jurors were spotted smoking near the courthouse before heading toward several local chain eateries. So are you watching the jurors? Are you following what they're doing? You seeing them outside smoking? They went to a couple of eateries locally. What else did they do? Did they go in there? What did they order? Did they order the Reuben? Did they order the footlong? What's going on? More than 30 reporters kept vigil during the day inside Ellis's empty courtroom in Alexandria, Virginia, under the watch of a court security officer. They read newspapers and scoured legal documents and whispered among themselves. Trial could end soon. Hopefully it does. After jurors left the courtroom to deliberate Friday morning, Ellis acknowledged the trial might end soon and prepared the media for the inevitable frenzy a verdict will bring. Ellis asked reporters who planned to race out of the building mid-verdict to deliver the news. No cameras, cell phones, or laptops are allowed for instantaneous reporting. Work from a sixth-floor overflow room. Here, I prefer we maintain some decorum as we go through the entire rather lengthy jury form. Ellis said, signaling that he keep the doors closed in the ninth floor courtroom where the verdict will be read aloud. So basically, he's trying to stop the mad dash. Everybody's trying to get first. You know, the reporters are going to be triggered about that. But it's like, look, man, I'm not really too much concerned about you. I'm more concerned about keeping this process fair, about protecting the jurors. I'm not really worried about what you got to have going on with your employer or whatever. Ellis has been irked by the abrupt comings and goings of reporters from the packed courtroom. I mean, I don't blame him. During his remarks Friday morning, Ellis acknowledged his behavior had generated media scrutiny. A 78-year-old Ronald Reagan appointee, Ellis has frequently clashed with Mueller's prosecutors in the bid to keep the trial moving at a rapid clip, a storyline news outlets have been highlighting. I'm no stranger to criticism, Ellis said. This case has brought it to a new level, of course, because you got all these outside people trying to tell you how to operate your courtroom. That's not their role. That's not their position. And the only reason why they're doing it is because of how high profile the case is. But I'll move on. We're almost done here. Earlier in the case, the judge maintained that he wasn't tracking press coverage of the trial, but in recent days, Ellis has made clear he's aware of reports that he gave a lot of grief to prosecutors during the trial. A thirsty press is essential to a free country, he said. That's hilarious. Thirsty press. They are very thirsty. Manafort was in the courtroom Friday for all three sessions, including the judge's discussion of the media's request for greater access. The veteran political consultant who spends his nights at the nearby Alexandria Detention Center looked ruddy and emotional as he entered the court Thursday. However, he appeared to be in good spirits Friday, flashing a smile to his wife as he entered the courtroom and blowing her a kiss as he left. Manafort's wife, Kathleen, joined her husband's legal team, which is camped out at the Westin Alexandria Hotel restaurant across the street from the courthouse. One of the defendant's attorneys, Thomas Zenley, shuffle a deck of cards before starting up a poker game with his fellow lawyers. Okay. So this is just kind of a person who is in the courtroom. This is their account of what's going on. Okay. Now here's the thing. CNN, Politico, all these other organizations are just like ravenous wolves, all on the situation, just trying to get whatever they can out of it. It doesn't matter if people's lives are ruined, because think about it like this. You're out here identifying patterns of people that are in the jury. You're trying to get their names and addresses and all this and that. You want to have the trial be more open and transparent. You want kind of an O.J. Simpson trial. You want everybody's face to be shown. You want to know everything about this case, really just to prop up your own numbers, because all these reporters are just working the job. It's not so much about trying to help the country. You know, they'll tell you that. They'll say that Trump, he's against the free and open press. You know, this is something that was essential to our Constitution, to the founding fathers. They don't care about that. They're more concerned about meeting deadlines, about being first, about breaking news. It's the business first. And on one hand, I don't blame them, because this is America. This is what it was built upon: rugged individualism, competition, capitalism. I get it. But at a certain point, people's lives are in danger. They're in a balance. So you need to be a little bit more thoughtful about how you go about doing certain things. So what do you think? Do you think that this whole kerfuffle is nothing more than a witch hunt, talking about the trial that is, and then the media's coverage of the trial? Is that just them trying to get money, or are they really trying to protect our republic? Do you think that there is a point to be made about revealing the jurors' names and addresses? And if you think that way, please explain to me why. What would that benefit anybody aside from the mainstream media, who was able to camp outside their house and basically intimidate them and disguise it as asking questions, giving them interviews and stuff like that? Whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.